here. Okay, so hold on. Speaker view. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to divide today's class in 4 sections. We're going to talk about the prologue. I'm putting it in the chat for you. So, we'll talk about the prologue. Number 2, we'll talk about the dialogues. And then we'll talk about God's speech, right? His response. And then finally the epilogue. These are the 4 things we're going to be talking about. And remember what I told you about the prologue and the epilogue, right? They are, you guys were disappointed with the epilogue. You should be, right? Because he's again in irony, right? He's again being ironic and sarcastic, and he's again making a caricature, and we'll see that, right, as we get into the text. So let's begin with the prologue. Turn with me in your books to page 5. Who is there? Let me see who is there. Tell me, just say yes or chat yes, so I know that you're with me on page 5. Everybody has their book. Actually, let me check how many of you have your books. This is a good moment to do this. How many of you have their books? Raise your hands. That's it. What about the rest of you? What did you use to do the reading assignment? I'm curious.
The online version you uploaded.
Oh, okay. So you have that. Okay, so everybody has. Okay. Of course, I forgot about that. Okay, good. So you have the Blackboard version. Very good. Okay, so he begins on page 5, and remember that this particular section, right, has to do is going to be making fun, right? The particular section is making fun. It's giving us a kind of it's making fun of the traditional views of God and of the believer. Okay, so make sure you write this down. This is important. Let me say it again so you can write it down. This particular section, right, is making fun of the traditional views of God and the traditional views of what it means to be a believer, right? So let's look a little bit at how this section pokes fun at Job, and then we're going to look briefly at God. Okay, so he begins. Once upon a time, in the land of Uz, there was a man named Job. And then he goes, he was a man of perfect integrity who feared God and avoided evil. And at that moment, there's a list. Now, if you're reading the text, you're expecting a list, yes, you would like to know more about this man of perfect integrity, but what kind of list do you feel there should be now? Right after saying he was a man of perfect integrity, what do you expect? What list of, what kind of things should be listed? What do you think?
Values?
Yes, exactly, right? You expect a list of virtues. He was good, he was benevolent, he was compassionate, he helped the poor. And instead, what do you have? What kind of list do you have here?
I'm just listed as property.
Exactly, it's very strange, right? They just said he was very good man, perfect integrity, and then instead of having a list of his virtues, you have a shopping list of his possessions. He had 7 sons, 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 oxen, and so forth, and also many slaves. He was the richest man of the East. Okay, so this already the author right there is telling us something. Subtly, right? With this book, you have to read between the lines. The author is very subtle. If he's going to make a criticism, he's going to be subtle. Can anybody tell me what is the subtle criticism that the author is making of Job here? Anybody see it?
That it was a fable?
What?
It was a fable once upon a time.
Yes. Okay, so that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. It is a fable, right? We don't know if it was historical or not, and it doesn't even matter, right? Because the story is philosophical. It has it's there to teach us something, right? So that's okay. But in what I just said, right? We have a description of Job as being virtuous, and then instead of a list of virtues, we have a list of possessions, right? That's how the author writes his portrait of Job. So tell me, what is the author saying subtly in associating the two? See if you
He doesn't really have much. Like, he just has, like, instead of having quality, he has quantity of, like, stuff.
Very good, very good. Exactly, right? We start to wonder, what is this integrity? Because all that is being described are his possessions. It seems like Job feels very hollow at that moment, right? He looks good, but when you scratch a little, there is nothing, right? Just material possessions. So that's one thing, right? That the author seems to be implying, that Job on the surface looks like a good, virtuous person, but when you scratch a little, all you see really in the heart, right, of the man our material possessions, right? So excellent, right? Another way that you could frame it is that it seems here that Job's virtue is connected to his possessions. In other words, this is the accusation, right, that is given later. Job seems to be serving God because of this list of possessions, right? So the author seems to be saying Job here is virtuous, but really he's in it for something, right? So make sure you write these 2 points. I think these are 2 excellent points, the point of Cancino and the point I'm making here. Make sure you write number 1. She said he looks virtuous on the outside, but when you scratch a little, there's nothing there really in his heart. What really matters to Job is material possessions, right? When you start to go a little deeper into his psychology, you don't see goodness, benevolence, compassion. You see money, right? So that's one thing. And the other point, right, that I'm making is that the author seems to be putting into connection Job's virtue and his prosperity. In other words, Job is virtuous perhaps because there is something in it for him. Right? He's virtuous because he knows that in consequence of his virtue, right, the effect that his virtue will have will be these 7 sons, 3 daughters, sheep, and thousands of camels, right? Everybody sees what the author is doing? Any questions so far? Good. We good, right? Okay. So now it's interesting because in the text, if you read it in the Hebrew, when they describe there's 2 words in the Hebrew. Here he translates perfect integrity, but actually in the Hebrew, and this is important, there are 2 words to describe Job, tam and yashar. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about those because those are also going to give us clues, right? And I'm putting them in the chat right now. So tam and yashar. So yashar means righteous. Literally, it means straight. So Job is straight, right? In other words, he's walking the line. That's what it means. To be yashar is to be walking the line. It's to be following the rules, doing the right things, right? So that's okay. Now, when you go to tam, it means something very interesting. Tam actually means somebody who is nice, but innocently nice. He's good, but naively good, right? Let me write this down. So tam is a kind of naive or innocent goodness. This is the goodness of people who have been sheltered all their lives, right? You know, these people they're good people, they're nice people, right? Because really nothing really ever happened that could make them into somebody evil, right? So this is kind of the equivalent. Job is a nice guy. That's what the text is saying. It's not saying Job is a good, deep. He's saying Job is just a nice guy, right? He walks the line and he's a nice guy. He's not profoundly good. He's naively good. He's good in a kind of naive, innocent sort of way, like sheltered people are good. They're good because, of course, it's easy to be good when you're sheltered, right? So the text itself, right, in the 2 words that are describing Job, already the author is saying this guy, he's just a nice guy who walks the line. There's nothing more there. There is a hollowness. Make sure you write this down. You can sense in reading this that Job is a hollow person at this point. It's not going to last. But right now, he's kind of 2-dimensional, hollow, not very interesting, nice guy. Okay, everybody sees it? Any questions or comments on because you need to get this before you can see the mutation he's going to go through, right? Okay.
You're saying
Yes.
he hasn't been tested, pretty much.
Yes, exactly. This is Job before life hits him. This is all of us before life hits us, to be honest, right? I mean, we can't just be like, oh, okay, that's them over there. No, all of us before life hits us, we're like that. We're 2-dimensional. We walk the line because we've been told to walk the line, and we're nice because nothing ever provoked us to be anything else, right? So this is all of us before life hits us. So we're about to see a change, right? As you get deeper into the text now, the poetic section, you begin to see Job mutate into something completely different. There is he's like a mutant, right? This is like those movies where, you know, you have like the perfectly normal human being and all of a sudden like his chest opens up and there's an alien coming out, right? This is what we have, right? This is where we are. Job is this alien coming out of this perfectly dignified man, and he is just disturbing everybody around him. So together, I want us to find 3 main points on where Job is different, right? Remember the poetic sections when you start to read, right? Remember, Job is hit with the first wave of calamities, right? At that moment, he falls silent. He doesn't say a word. He's still doing good in terms of, obedience and submission, right? And then there's a second wave whereby he becomes now directly hit in his body. And at that moment, he opens his mouth, right? And the first words he says when he opens his mouth, you remember, page 13, God damn the day, right, that I was born, or cursed be the day that I was born. So now this is not walking the line anymore. He's done. He's done walking the line. He's done working with the system. He's done voting, right, just to bring in all the chaos, right? He's done. It's enough, right? Cursed be the day he's cursing now, right? He's no more the gentleman, he's politically correct, walking the line, doing all the right things. He has exploded, right? So there are 3 main points, 3 main things that shift in Job. So I'm going to hear you out. You're going to tell me on what 3 points do you think that he is different from the prologue? On what 3 levels does Job shift or mutate? Let me hear you. I'm listening.
Job finally has a voice. He has some courage. He's not this servile, like, oh, everything is great.
Okay, excellent. Number 1, I'm putting it in. He moves from being submissive to rebellious. Okay, let's stop on this one for a little bit, right? First, that's the first shift you see. Job was submissive. He was yashar. He was walking the line. And now he's exploding. He's not walking the line anymore. He's crossing every single boundary and limit and threshold. He's crossing the line, like we say, right? Instead of walking the line, he's now crossed the line, right? So he goes from submissive to rebellious. Let me give you a couple texts that go along with that. Let's go to, this is the text that Rodriguez liked, page 23. Go with me to page 23. Last paragraph. Therefore, who is there? Just say yes, so I hear you.
Yes.
Yes, okay, that's it. All right, good. Last paragraph. Therefore, he says, I refuse to be quiet. I will cry out my bitter despair. Okay, so this is really, he's not acting like like a believer is supposed to act. A true believer has faith, right? True believer has faith and, dwells in prayer and just humbles themselves before God and is meek, right? Or this is not meekness. This is not humility. This is arrogance, right? I refuse to be quiet. I refuse to be where life has put me, right? I refuse to walk the line. I refuse to be stuck in this, how shall I put it, in the position that life has put me in. I refuse to be stuck in it, right? This is so that's the first thing we have, right? First shift we have from submission to subversion. Let me see another one on page 41 where his friends are talking about him. Go to page 41, last 3 lines on page 41. What has made you so wild? Who is there? Say yes if you're there.
Yes. Page 41.
Yes, page 41, last 3 lines. His friend is telling him, right, Eliphaz is telling him, what has made you so wild that you spew your anger at God and spit out such insolent words, right? Job is insolent. In other words, what's insolent? Another word for insolent is he's disrespectful, right? He's blasphemous. Right, this is insane. This this is unacceptable. Like, I don't know what your name was. Who is the Greek Orthodox? Who are you? What's your name again? Yes. What's your last name again? Tell me.
Holeva.
Holevas. Yes, like Holevas was saying, right? This is not Christian behavior. This is not Jewish behavior. This is not Muslim behavior, right? He's exposed. That's the first one. Now, anything else that you see that is completely different? There's 2 more points that I'm seeing which show a shift between the Job of the prologue and the Job of the poetry. Can anyone see another difference?
I think it's the I guess the naiveness, because I feel like in passages where they're talking about kind of God being someone that is all-knowing, you can't really fathom what God has to say. You can't really fathom his wisdom. Job kind of affirms that he has some wisdom. He has some knowledge as well. He has some knowledge, and he's able to I guess this does kind of lean back into the first point about arrogance, but he's kind of confident in his ability to kind of understand or engage in God's teachings.
Yes, I'm going to put that in the first one too. I like it, but it fits
It's
very.
still
He's
in the first
arrogant.
one.
He's
Yeah.
standing up. He's refusing to be quiet. Right? He's refusing to fall silent and act like he doesn't know. Right? Very good. So I'm still putting that one in the first
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
Another difference. There's another.
It seems kind of obvious, but isn't it just his fortune? Like he just goes from fortunate to misfortunate with his belongings and what's going on with his luck and all that. Is that what it is? Or?
So that's an external thing, right? I'm looking for internal transformation. Based, of course, that's happening, right? This is what's happening outside, but inside he's shifting, right? So what's the second thing you're seeing? Think about the tone of his voice. Would this be a tone that how would you describe the tone of Job's voice? Like,
He's angry.
okay, very good. Job is emotional. He's never been emotional. Look at him in the prologue. Look at this guy, right? He's over here. I'm back at the prologue, right? There was a man, he was a man of perfect integrity. He feared God, avoided evil. This is self-control. This is the Job who masters himself, who is dignified, who is calm, who is rational, who is able to make arguments, right? It's over, right? So the second point, right? Second difference, he moves from being robotic to passionate, right? Or emotional, right? We have all of a sudden an explosion of emotions. We didn't know Job had it in him to talk like that. He has anger, despair, sorrow, a kind of cynicism at the same time, right? There's so many emotions exploding in this man at the same time, right? And everybody is appalled, right? They're watching this and they're like, oh my, what are you doing? Stop, right? He is just exploding. We have people in the street right now exploding, right? Job is so relevant to what we're doing right now, to what we're living right now, right? So he has lost the political correctness, the ability to, use discourse. He has lost the ability to communicate. He's just, right, going through the streets, staring at something around him, right? So this is where we have, right? He has become emotional. Look at page 22 for a quote. Remember to jot down all these quotes, right? Because you'll need them for your test. Okay, look at page 22 and count from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do you want to disprove? Who is there? Actually, 6, 7, 8. Go to 8. Does honest speech. Who is there? Does honest. So page 22, 8 from the bottom. Does honest speech. Say yes if you're there. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's saying, right, does honest speech offend you? Are you shocked by what I said, right? Do you want to disprove my passion or argue away my despair, right? We have right now a conflict in the streets between argument, rationality, and despair and passion, right? And it's interesting that Job is more on the side of despair and passion than on the side of, correct speech, argumentation, discourse, right? We are really, this is really a book written for our times, right? So we have here Job, he has lost his mind, basically. He has lost his ability to reason. He has lost his self-control. He is just overwhelmed and exploding and erupting in emotions, right? Very good. Okay, the last one, I'm going to give it to you. He moves from being clear to confused, right? The Job in the prologue knows how to play the game, right? He knows the system. He knows what needs to be done so that God will bless him. He knows what, let me see, how do you call it? What cards to play, what buttons to push. He understands the system, right? And he does it well, and he's good at it, and he gets his reward, right? And he knows the game. When you get to the suffering, the rules change, right? It's as though the rules have changed. The game is not the same. It's not working. What he used to do, which brought him success, is not working for him anymore, right? He used to know who God was. He used to know what's the right thing to do. Now he doesn't know anymore. He doesn't know who God is. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know even who he is. He has lost the sense of who he is even. He doesn't even recognize himself. Look at the text. Well, simply when he says on page 13, right? When he begins, "Cursed be the day I was born." This is already a sign that I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm on this earth. I don't understand the structure of the cosmos, right? Go to page 14, next page, and you have here, starting from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. "For God has hidden my way." Say yes if you're there. No one's there?
Yeah.
Okay. So he says here, right? "For God has hidden my way and put hedges across my path." I don't know where I'm going anymore. I'm lost. I'm confused. I don't know what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do. A lot of us go through this, right? They're not all the time. Most of the time we know what's the right thing, what's the wrong thing. But there are moments in life where it's simply impossible to know what is the right thing to do. Both look wrong or both look right, right? Job is in this period, right? Okay. So you get a sense of what's going on, right? Job has profoundly shifted. Now, the interesting question to ask is, how does God react to this, right? This is what we would need to know. What does God think about this? Look at the end. At the very end, which you read, when God is finally, right? It's the epilogue, right? Page 91. Let's see a little bit the conclusion, what God thinks about this craziness, right? That he's going. So I'm going to read. "After he had spoken to Job," page 91, "the Lord said to Eliphaz, I am angry at you and your two friends, because you have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has." So this is very strange. What does this mean? How in the world, why does God take position with Job when Job has been ranting against him the whole time? So this is a question for you guys. What is it that God loves about Job's mutation? Look at the 3 points. Let's look at all three: the rebellion, the emotional, the confused. Let's start with the rebellion. What does God love about Job's rebellion? Why does God find Job's rebellion beautiful in a certain way? Tell me, what is so good about this rebellion?
I guess it was honest.
It's sincere.
Go ahead. Who said that?
Said what?
Sincere?
Sincere. Yeah, that's me.
Oh, that was you. That was me. Okay, Blade says sincere. Trujillo, he was honest. Who else raised their hand? And then Jolevas, I think you were saying something too?
Yeah, same thing. I said it was honest.
Exactly, right? First of all, right? First thing that is amazing about rebellion. You can tell your parents that the next time you rebel against them. You're done with adolescence, aren't you? But any moment there is rebellion in the air, God enjoys it. Actually, I would venture to say any moment there's rebellion in the air, there is a moment. Yes.
I'm sorry. I have a quick question. I viewed that part a little differently, like discussed with my group. He could like appreciate, I guess, his rebellion, but I also seen it as, because you know how in a lot of places people are always saying like only God can judge you, and the fact that his friends were judging him, I thought that that's why God was upset, because he's like, how dare you judge another man before me? Only I'm allowed to do that. So I thought that's why God didn't condemn them, but like was really upset with them, because it's like, how dare you put that on another man when I'm the only one who's supposed to really do that?
Yes, that works too, right? God is angry about them having spoken at all, right? Anytime we start to place judgment on anything, we're already in the wrong place, right? But at the same time, he's also angry about how they have spoken about him, right? So the way that the friends were talking about God, all the arguments they made, the way they were chastising Job for being rebellious, God is like, no, that's my man. I like him like that, right? I find that attractive, right? So first of all, right, absolutely. First thing we learn is that God enjoys it when we're real, right? All this hypocrisy and acting nice and having, Christian smiles and so forth, this is not his cup of tea, right? God is not churchy. He's not synagogue-y, right? God enjoys real honest, sincere, even if it's arrogant and out of line, it's at least it's communicating, right? So that's the first thing we get. Very good. What else? Let's look at the emotional. Why does God enjoy emotion? What is so good about our emotional, volcanic emotions? Why does God enjoy that about Job? Why does he find it fascinating and beautiful? What do you think?
Well, the divine or God is perfect. Humans are imperfect. So by being emotional, there's a passion. There's something more than just being perfect.
Okay, so he likes what he doesn't have. Is that what you're saying? Opposites attract. God is in full control and humans are, right? So he's like, oh, that's cool. So be careful, because when you read the Hebrew Bible, right, you have a different portrait of God, right? When you have a very passionate God in the Hebrew Bible, especially what we call the Old Testament, right? This is the Hebrew Bible. The God of the Hebrew Bible is not the Greek God of, the first cause that is unmoved, right? The unmoved mover. This is a Greek definition, which of course has infiltrated Christianity, right? But the Hebrew concept of God is much more, God is really somebody with passions. You have anger, you have love, you have fidelity, you have despair, you have regret. These emotions, right, are described as belonging to God too, right? So in a way, Job is more reflecting God than differing from God, at least when it comes to the Hebrew Bible, right? But very good, good observation. What about confusion? Why does God enjoy confusion? What does he find beautiful about our moments of confusion? Why is it good to be confused sometimes, to not know where you're going?
I was going to say Job finally, I guess back to Job is no longer vanilla, right? Job is no longer this boring, walks the straight line. He now has an opinion and he's questioning, right, his life. And you can make all the plans and you can think you have the best laid plans. However, that's really not life, right? Fully lived, right? Fully lived and experienced. It's not life. Like, I think the word that you used earlier was, naive. Job is no longer living in this little world where everything is going in his direction. Everything is favorable to Job.
Very good. Excellent, right? He's not vanilla anymore. He's become, he realizes the world, there's no control over life, right? Life, you cannot control life. This is something that most of us will never learn. This is why we are, in my view, if we can understand this, we will be so freed. To understand that we can't control life is so freeing. Because then you just kind of accept and live and experience instead of constantly wanting to fit life into your little box. You miss out when you do that. You miss out, right? We'll talk more about this little box syndrome that Job used to have. But right, absolutely. Job realizes I can't control. And there's something beautiful about letting go and allowing life to fully come at you, right? Rather than being there, always arranging everything, right? Very good. By the way,
Professor.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a question. Then saying in the beginning how Job was hollow and he was only righteous through his worldly possessions. Then when when Satan goes to God and questions God on Job, does God allow Satan to unleash his wrath on Job because he believes that Job is righteous and Job is gonna come back and he might dwindle off the road, but he'll find his way back to God? Or did he do it because God knew that Job's righteousness couldn't be proven until he was actually stripped of everything that God had given him?
So yes, both, in a way, the author leaves it in suspense, right? He doesn't want us to make a clear, he doesn't want us to see God's intentions clearly, right? You can't actually, nobody can see God's intentions clearly, but he seems to be hinting that this journey is necessary for Job, right? Not for God, for Job, right? This is what's interesting. A lot of us, we read the story of Job as the whole story for God's sake, so that God could be like, phew, okay, I guess he is faithful to me. No, God doesn't need, right, to any type of, he knows who we are, right? He doesn't need any type of, this story is more about what Job needed, right? I think that's what the author seems to be implying, more than, so yes, okay, so quick clarification. What was the reason God enjoys Job's emotional side? So I forgot, what did I say? I don't know, did we come to a conclusion? I don't remember what I said. Let me see what I wrote. Yes, why? Yes, okay, I'm gonna say that.
We said that God is like full of passion and stuff like that, and that like in that very moment, Job was kind of reflecting that. So if anything, he was closer to God in that moment.
Okay, good. Yes, I'm going to add something to that, right, in a second. So don't worry, I'm going to add something to that because this is only part of the picture. Very good question, Simone. Okay, so let me be clear about that, right? The story of Job, based on what the way the author is writing it, is more a story about what Job needed rather than what God needed, right? Remember, the prologue is not serious, right? Prologue is making fun. Prologue is like a cartoon, right? So you imagine God, the author is imagining, it's kind of like making fun of the traditional view of God and the traditional view of Satan and how he's imagining a conversation. But really what matters is the poetic section. Remember what I said, right? So what we really see in the poetic section is the transformation, the much needed transformation of Job. And so it seems that the book is really about what Job needs more than what God needs, okay? So bottom line, right? Let me conclude on this section and then we'll take a quick break. What we're seeing in this transformation mostly is that Job is becoming human. This is it. This is Job moves from being this kind of perfect person, right? This kind of model citizen. He is thrown back onto his humanity. Right? He's thrown back on his limitations, his fragility, his emotions, right? His passions, right? He becomes human. He becomes confused. He becomes emotional. He becomes arrogant. These are all very human qualities that often in religion we are not allowed to have, right? We are not allowed in many faiths to be confused. We're not allowed to feel. We're not allowed to rebel. Right here we are supposed to be these model, right? We have an expression in French that we have to be sage comme une image, wise like a picture, like just be like a picture and then you'll be wise, right? So we have this. Job is thrown back on his humanity. Make sure you write this down. This is what is happening. Job was a kind of two-dimensional cardboard version of himself right before, and he's now thrown back on his humanity. He's broken, he's confused, he's lost, he's emotional, he's out of control, right? And the most beautiful thing about this story is that it is when he finds his humanity, and we're going to see this especially in the second part, is that's when he finds God. Okay, let me say that again because this is very important. It's when Job finds his humanity that he is finally able to pierce through and enter a deeper dimension of spirituality and genuinely see God in a way that we'll discover together. We haven't yet done it, right? So in other words, what we're learning here, which is fundamental, is that our humanity is not an obstacle to the spiritual journey. It's not an obstacle to getting close to God. Our humanity, our confusion, our pain, our despair, our rebellion is a path to God. Right? It's what brings us, the more you are in touch with your emotions, with your questions, with your own despair, the more you are real with yourself, is the closer you will get of a vision or an encounter with God, as we're going to see, right? That's the beginning. If you want to have a vision of God, you have to first be real with yourself. You can't, right? And this is so interesting because when you go to the Greek concept, right? When you go to the religious teachings, right, about how to be a good Christian or a good Jew or a good Muslim, you will see that often the sacrifice is our own humanity. We are told to shed our humanity, to shed our questions, let go of your emotions, don't think, don't feel, don't talk, right? Often this is the case. And what we're seeing here is that no, it's when you think, it's when you feel, it's when you speak up, it's when you have this eruption of humanity that you are on the path. Finally, now you are ready, you are set up, you are in the right stance to have a profound encounter with the divine, not before. As long as you're a cardboard picture of yourself, right? Nothing gonna happen, right? So that's what we're seeing. As Job is becoming more human, he's becoming more spiritual, right? Let me say that again. As Job is becoming more human, he's becoming more spiritual. So in the second part of the lecture, which we'll take a little break because I need to breathe. We're like 4 minutes. We'll take a 4-minute break. We'll start again at 5:15, and we're going to talk about God's response. Okay, so let's take a quick break. I'm going to stop the recording.